Hey guys, this is your lesson recording for 3.4b, and I want to start off by saying it will feel like a breath of fresh air after going through Lewis structures and naming ionic compounds. This is going to be much more straightforward than either of those two lessons that we've done the last couple of lessons before this. So hopefully this feels a little bit easier. So naming covalent molecules is much easier than naming ionic compounds. The reason is because we have to be really explicit about the way that we name them. Because, for example, unlike with ionic compounds in which we can only have one way to combine things, my covalent molecules can combine in all kinds of combinations. These are both two valid covalent molecules. And so I couldn't just say this is carbon hydride like I would if it was an ionic compound, because you won't know if I mean this or if I mean that. So what we do when we're naming covalent compounds is we have to be really specific. And I should have just left those up actually. We have to be really specific and include a prefix. So I would have to say there's 2 carbons and 8 hydrogens in this compound. So I could say dicarbon octahydride. Or I would say monocarbon tetrahydride. So I have to be more specific, and that makes it easier to translate both directions. So now I'll erase this. We can use these prefixes to tell the person how many of each atom I have in this molecule. So I'll still use an "ide" ending, and then these are the prefixes that I need to know. I will not make you memorize these. I'll give these to you on an exam. I'm not going to throw them on a quiz, but you're welcome to pull up your guided notes on a quiz and look at this table. Exceptions in naming. So when the prefix ends in an A or E, you're going to drop the last vowel of the prefix for oxygen. So for example, instead of saying monoxide, that'd be really hard to say, so we just say monoxide. A couple of examples. So H2O, the formal name would be dihydrogen because there are 2 hydrogens, and then I've got 1 oxygen, so I would say monoxide. Another one, carbon and 4 hydrogens. I would say carbon tetrahydride. Did I not include that in your, I will add this so that it shows up on yours, but I should have a second exception here, which is also when there is only one of the first element, skip mono. That is the second exception. And I will type that and add it onto all of yours so that it shows up there. So by the time you're looking at that, it should already be there. So for example, carbon tetrahydride instead of monocarbon tetrahydride. Here's one more, N2O3, 2 nitrogens, 3 oxygens, so dinitrogen trioxide. All right, let's do a couple more. So here I've got carbon and 4 fluorines. I've got 1 carbon and 4 fluorines. So this is going to be, I would put mono if it wasn't at the beginning. So if it was at the end, I'd say mono, but since it's at the beginning, I don't need to include mono. So I'm just going to call this carbon tetra, because tetra is my prefix for 4. And then F is fluorine, so this is fluoride. And I'll do, make this purple, and then I'll do this one. So this has 2 N's and 5 O's. So I'm going to look up the prefix for 2 is di, the prefix for 5 is penta. So this is going to be dinitrogen penta, and then it's oxide. So I'm going to ditch this last vowel and say pentoxide. Okay, pretty straightforward. You guys do the other 3. And I will fill them in for the answer key after you've had a chance to go in and try them yourself. Okay, going the other direction. This should say mono. I will also fix this on yours. So that should say monosilicide. Okay, so hexacarbon. So that means there are, I'm going to look and see hexa. What is that the prefix for? Hexa is 6, and then mono is 1. So this is going to be 6 carbons. So that's going to be C. Oh, that's a huge marker. This is going to be C6. And make sure that's a subscript. And then mono is 1. Silicide, that means silica is the element. You can use a periodic table to find that. And then mono, there's just 1, so I'm not going to write the 1. I'll do this one. No, this one. Carbon dioxide. So this is a compound hopefully you're familiar with in your life. So carbon, there's no mono since it's the beginning. So it's just C for carbon. Di is the prefix for 2. Oxide, so that means O2. All right, so those are the only examples I'll go through. There is, of course, another resource posted in your modules for this. So if you do run into trouble, feel free to watch this video as well. And then try and go through these last couple examples on your own.